So with the most recent patch to Fortnite Battle Royale came a whole bunch of changes. Some of them even hidden and not mentioned in the patch notes. I'm going to cover the most important changes briefly, and then we'll talk about the massive SMG buff that this update also brought. So first of all, there's been yet another nerf to shotguns. This time reducing the damage they do to structures by 50% for pumps and 25% for tactical and heavy shotguns. On top of that, ammo now drops in stacks of 4 shells instead of 5. Now on the plus side, dual pistols were added. You can't just pick up 2 standard pistols though. Instead, you'll need to find them in floor loot, chests, and supply drops. They come in epic and legendary rarity, and you can shoot both pistols at the same time with one pull of the trigger. Now of note, there's no first shot accuracy with these, and oddly enough, they don't use light ammo but rather heavy. They also do a whopping 41 to 43 damage, meaning you can drop someone in seconds. Now the next update is one of my absolute favorites. I'm sure a majority of you have killed someone actually in Loot Lake before. Before this update, the loot would go underwater and made it seemingly invisible. You could see it by doing a weird camera angle that gave you an underwater view, but more often than not, it was lost in the depths of the water. Now, however, they made it so loot actually floats on top of the water. So watch here as I kill this guy in the water and his loot is perfectly seen. You can even build platforms right on top of the loot and it can still be seen and thus collected. Another awesome change comes to the marker placement on the map. Before talking about that though, I should note that they also made the bus route visible without even bringing up the full-size minimap. So in the pre-game lobby, you can now see a brief glimpse of the bus route before the game starts on your minimap. Now as for the map markers themselves, they're now fully 3D and visible in real time with bright colors. You can even mark them on your map in the pre-game island and see them off in the distance. These indicators make finding the exact locations much easier. Of note, when you get close to these, they do start to disappear. You can even use these markers to your benefit in solo games. I use them to mark items that I could possibly come back to, such as a medkit or a slurp juice that I couldn't carry at the time. Another change that I'm finding incredible is that to the thermal scoped rifles. In fact, there was 2 changes to these. First, if you weren't aware, the thermal scope allows you to see chests and supply drops, which light up just like enemies would. But before this update, open treasure chests would still light up, which would get a bit frustrating. Now, however, they made it so they only light up when unopened. In addition, thermal scoped rifles will now consistently exhibit intended accuracy while scoped in. I'm sure if you used one of these scopes before the update, you lined up a perfect shot only to miss. This was just a bug with the accuracy. As mentioned, it's now fixed and the thermal scopes are much more accurate. Now there was also a huge nerf when it comes to editing materials. I'm sure a lot of you have watched big streamers hold an edit on a wall so they could see right through it and observe what's happening. This has been completely nerfed, as now the edited squares turn gray and blue, and there's no way to see right through them. I guess there are still little cracks that you can kind of see through, but they aren't transparent like they were before. I actually had no idea that this was a glitch in the first place, but I'd say this is a decent change. I wasn't a fan of people turtling up and being able to see everything safely behind cover with no risk whatsoever. Next up, there was a huge buff to explosive items. Explosions now damage all structures within range, whether or not they're visible from the explosion's center. Now this is kind of confusing, so let me give you an example. Imagine C4 after all its buffs. When you throw one of these at a large structure, several adjacent walls get caught in the blast and demolished. And that's now what all explosions do. This is a great buff to the grenade launcher and the RPG in particular. 1 or 2 grenades or rockets can take down a massive player-built fortress, so the grenade launcher is extremely potent after this buff. You can easily knock down a structure in 1 grenade and then have the follow-up grenade deal the coup de grace. In addition, the grenade launcher has also been temporarily changed to shoot fireworks, and this is a cosmetic change only. Now lastly, let's talk about the SMG buff. For the tactical SMG, they removed first shot accuracy, and they lowered the ADS bonus by 10%. So these are actually nerfs, however, the buffs more than make up for it. They increased the base accuracy by 25%, lowered the sprinting accuracy penalty by 15%, and increased the damage by 2. This means that the green tac SMG does 18 damage, the blue does 19, and the purple does a whopping 20. The purple tac SMG was already incredibly powerful, even if it was underused. With 35 rounds and a fire rate of 13, it has the highest damage per second in the entire game, even more than the gold scar. Now for the silenced SMGs, they were given an increased base accuracy of 10%. In addition, an increased ADS accuracy bonus of 20% and an increased damage of 2. That means the gray one does 22 damage, the green one does 23, and the blue one does 24. Now these have a smaller 30 round magazine and a slower fire rate of 9. So what do these SMG buffs actually mean? More or less, the SMGs can now compete and even conquer shotgun users. So if you see some black sock wearing scallywag bald bull charging you like Ninja with a cheating double pump, just whip out either SMG and shred him before he can get a shot off. Now I for one hate shotguns in this game. Anyone can pick one up, aim for the head in close quarters, and pull the trigger. If you've seen any of my live gameplays before, you'll know I never double pump and I only use shotguns as a last resort. I've been using SMGs and ARs in close range combat for ages, but now the SMGs are actually viable. Now I've been getting a lot of requests to do some live challenges, so allow me to demonstrate the power of the newly buffed SMGs to end this video. I'll do a post-game commentary as I continue to talk about these buffs. So in this game, I found a blue silenced SMG to start and I used it as my only weapon throughout the game. As you can see, I easily disposed of this newbie booby camping his butt off in this building. Now once I made my way out of Lucky Landing, I looted in Fatal Fields briefly before hearing someone Freddy Kruegering his way in the forest. I initially posted up to see if he would come out. It was then I saw him creeping and noticed he was a no-skin, which was a mistake on my behalf to doubt his capabilities. We had a little build-off, but my vision was distracted by this stupid tree. I also like to set offensive traps just in case my opponents get aggressive and run up my own builds. After a few seconds, I noticed that he retreated, so I made my way downward as well, only to hear him lurking behind me still. And that's when the second round began, with him making an offensive move above my head. And then he struck, lunging at me with a shotgun. So I offensively blocked his ramps by putting platforms, and then it was time to unleash the power of the SMG. You can see he instantly gets depleted of life, compliments of the newly Super Saiyan SMG. From here, I looted a little more as I made my way to the next circle, picking up a slurp juice of note. As I made my way into the new zone, I saw the remnants of a battle, and so I went to investigate the leftover loot, upgrading my AR to a blue one. At this point, someone took a cheap shot at me from behind with a sniper, and this resulted in me building frantically as I didn't have eyes on him. Glancing at the timer and the next circle though, I knew I had time to lollygag, and I let this guy come to me, which is exactly what he did. So I spotted him at the base of my ramp, and even at this distance, he was no match for the silenced blue. He fell immediately as the 24s christened off his corpse. But before I could get all his loot, some butt-faced beaver observing the skirmish snuck up on me, luckily missing every single shot in the process. He of course paid the price, as my boy Blue erased him faster than a snap of Thanos' fingers. At this point, there were only 6 people left, and that's when someone took shots at me as I entered the next zone. I noticed that I had a launch pad left, so I made my way up the mountain to get a good launch zone should the need arise. On my way up, I saw someone ramp rushing the next mountain, but I missed a lot of my bullets somehow, unable to shoot him down to his death. So as they went at it, I pushed from the right side while they were distracted. Once I got to the top, I lasered the surviving John Wick, but not realizing that there was another lurker nearby. At this point I kinda panicked, and I didn't like the advantage he had, so I launched out of there. After jumping, I noticed someone else push just as I left. So from here, I now had the next circle as well as a view on the ongoing fight. Not to mention a free supply drop which topped me off to max health and shield. So at this point, my son came into the room and wanted to see me use the new pistols and the new firework launcher. I did tell him I was going for a challenge, but that I'd try to use them without getting a kill. So I saw this guy sniping on top this mountain. So I used his already made ramps to get a better look. I thought he was on the top of the mountain, but he was actually on my left, and I got caught by surprise and took some damage. I then rained down some fireworks on this guy for my son. Somehow though, I did absolutely 0 damage, and then I stupidly fell off my ramps and took my own damage. I then missed some pistol shots and took a pistol to my own face. At this point, I wasn't comfortable with the storm closing in and me on low health, so I launched to a safer destination. What I hadn't realized was that it was now a 1v1 situation. For some reason, the guy didn't chase me right away, so I had some time to set up 2 campfires and get back to 150 health. Then, as I got down to look for him, I heard him trudge bowling straight at me from above the hill, so I built up as the final battle ensued. I got the high ground and placed a trap, but then I said screw it, dropped down, and cold cocked him into oblivion. So as you can see, both SMGs are extremely powerful now, and you can safely counter shotgun users from medium to close range. So if you haven't done so yet, I highly recommend giving both the SMGs another shot. Let me know in the comments what you think of these buffs, and in particular the SMG ones. I also highly recommend trying the newly buffed grenade launcher out. There's nothing more satisfying than raining down some fireworks on your opponent. And with the newly revised explosion buff, a swift explosive death comes quicker than ever.